Have you ever had one of those days where you felt like you accomplished a lot but didn't really accomplish anything important? You were busy from morning to night responding to emails, attending meetings, putting out fires, but at the end of the day you wondered, what did I really get done? If so, you're experiencing what I call the urgency trap. And here's what I've discovered in my work with thousands of individuals and organizations. Most people are living their lives in reaction mode, allowing urgent matters to crowd out what's truly important. Now let me share with you a natural law that can change everything. There's a principle at work in the universe as predictable as the law of gravity. We become what we repeatedly do. The question is, what are you repeatedly doing? Here's the key that unlocks personal freedom. Between every stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. Let me give you a simple example. Your phone rings during your most important work. That's the stimulus. Your automatic response might be to answer immediately. But remember, there's a space. In that space, you can ask, is this call more important than what I'm doing right now? Most people feel managed by their time rather than managing their choices within time. But here's what I want you to understand. You can't manage time. Time manages itself. What you can manage are the choices you make within time. What I want to share with you today is a simple 10-minute daily practice that transforms reactive time use into proactive life leadership. This flows directly from what I call habit 3, put first things first. Now let me share with you a fundamental law governing all human effectiveness. Are you ready for this? The most important activities are rarely the most urgent. And the most urgent activities are rarely the most important. Think about that for a moment. This isn't just a clever saying, it's a natural law that governs success in every area of life. You can't cram on the farm. You can't forget to plant in the spring, goof off all summer, and then work hard in the fall to bring in the harvest. The harvest is a natural consequence of the work you did months earlier. The same principle applies to your daily effectiveness. The activities that create the greatest long-term value, building relationships, preventing problems, developing skills, planning ahead, these rarely feel urgent. But they're absolutely essential. Let me walk you through what I call the time management matrix. This isn't just a planning tool, it's a paradigm for understanding the difference between leadership and management of your life. Picture two axes, one representing urgency, the other representing importance. This creates 4 quadrants that will change how you think about every activity in your life. First, quadrant 1, urgent and important. Crisis management, emergency meetings, last-minute deadlines. We all have quadrant 1 activities, genuine crises that demand immediate attention. The question is, how much of your life is spent here? Because here's what I've learned. Living primarily in quadrant 1 leads to stress, burnout, and always putting out fires. You're constantly in reactive mode. Now here's where it gets interesting. Quadrant 2, important, not urgent. This is what most people don't realize. This is where effectiveness lives. Prevention, planning, relationship building, learning, renewal, exercise, meditation. Activities that if done consistently would dramatically improve your life, but because they're not urgent, they get postponed. Day after day, week after week. What I've discovered is that time spent in quadrant 2 reduces the amount of time you'll spend in quadrant 1. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When you invest time in prevention, preparation, and planning, you prevent many of the crises that would otherwise consume your time. Let me explain quadrant 3, urgent, not important. This quadrant is deceptive because it feels important due to its urgency. Interruptions, some phone calls, some meetings, some reports. Here's how to recognize quadrant 3. It's urgent to someone else, but doesn't advance your important priorities. Yet, how much time do we spend here thinking we're being effective because we're being responsive? Finally, quadrant 4, not urgent, not important. Time wasters, excessive entertainment, trivia, busy work that accomplishes nothing meaningful. This is where people escape when they're burned out from too much time in quadrants I and E.G. Now here's something I want you to consider. Many people are addicted to urgency. They get an adrenaline rush from crisis management. They feel important when they're putting out fires. But here's what I've learned. Urgency addiction is a form of external control over your life. You're not choosing your priorities. Your circumstances are choosing them for you. I remember working with an executive who told me, Stephen, I don't have time to plan. I'm too busy putting out fires. That's when I realized he had confused being busy with being effective. He was spending 80% of his time in quadrant 1, which meant he had no time for the quadrant 2 activities that would have prevented most of those fires in the first place. The shift from time management to self-leadership begins inside out, not with techniques, but with principles, not with efficiency, but with effectiveness. What I call principle-centered time leadership begins with a simple recognition. You are not a victim of your schedule. You are the architect of your choices. The question isn't, how can I manage my time better? The question is, how can I make better choices about what deserves my time and attention? That's where our 10-minute daily practice comes in. Let me share with you a story that illustrates the power of this principle. I once worked with a senior manager who was drowning in quadrant 1 activities. 12-hour days, weekend work, constant crisis management. He was exhausted, his family was frustrated, and despite all his hard work, he felt like he was falling further behind every day. When we first met, he told me, Stephen, I know I should plan more, but I don't have time. I'm too busy putting out fires. Sound familiar? I introduced him to what I call the daily Big Rocks session. Just 10 minutes each morning, identifying and scheduling his most important activities. He was skeptical. 10 minutes, he said. I don't even have time to eat lunch. But he agreed to try it. Within 3 weeks, something remarkable happened. His crisis time dropped by 60%. Not because he worked harder, but because he worked on prevention in quadrant 2. He started planning for problems before they became emergencies. He began having conversations with his team before issues exploded into crises. And that's when he realized something profound. He called me and said, Stephen, I wasn't managing my time was managing me. The principle here is this: when you proactively choose your priorities, you reactively handle fewer crises. And let me share another example. A mother of 3 who felt overwhelmed by the demands of family life. Every evening felt chaotic. She was constantly reacting to her children's needs, feeling like she was always one step behind. She began using her 10 minutes each morning to identify her family's big rocks for the day. Meaningful time with each child, preparation that prevented evening chaos, relationship moments with her husband. Simple things like preparing tomorrow's lunches the night before, planning a brief one-on-one conversation with each child, scheduling 15 minutes of uninterrupted time with their spouse. The results were remarkable. Her stress decreased, her relationships deepened, and her family began commenting on how much more present she seemed. Here's what she discovered. Leadership in the home follows the same natural laws as leadership anywhere else. Now consider this for a moment. What would happen in your life if you invested 10 minutes each morning in quadrant 2 activities? What fires are you fighting today that could have been prevented with yesterday's planning? The stories I've shared aren't unique. They represent a natural law in action. When you align your daily choices with what's most important, everything else begins to fall into place. Now let me walk you through the specific practice that creates this transformation. First, let me help you understand why this 10-minute practice works. It's based on what I call the big rocks principle. Imagine you have a jar, some big rocks, some pebbles, and some sand. If you put the sand and pebbles in the jar first, you'll never fit the big rocks. But if you put the big rocks in first, the sand and pebbles will find their place around them. Your big rocks are your most important activities, the things that if accomplished would make the biggest difference in your life. Everything else is sand and pebbles. The principle is simple. If you don't schedule your big rocks first, they'll never fit into your day. Here's the systematic practice I call the daily big rocks session. 10 minutes that can transform your entire day. Begin by asking yourself this question: what are the most important things I could accomplish today that would make the biggest difference? Not just to your schedule, but to your mission, your goals, your relationships, your long-term effectiveness. Here's what I've learned from working with thousands of people. Most can handle a maximum of 3 big rocks per day and do them well. More than 3, and you dilute your focus. Fewer than 3, and you're not maximizing your potential. These big rocks should connect to your larger mission and the roles you've identified as most important in your life. Are you a spouse, a parent, a professional, a community member? What would effectiveness look like in each of these roles today? Here's a crucial point. At least one of your big rocks should be a quadrant 2 activity, something important but not urgent that will prevent future problems or create future opportunities. This might be planning for next week, having an important conversation, investing in your health, or developing a key skill. Now comes the crucial step. Schedule your big rocks into specific time blocks. This is what I call making an appointment with yourself. Don't just put them on a wish list. Give them actual time on your calendar. Treat these appointments as seriously as you would a meeting with your most important client. Because here's the truth. You are your most important client. Schedule your most important big rock during your peak energy time. For most people, this is first thing in the morning, before the day starts managing them. But know yourself. When are you at your mental and physical best? And here's something crucial. Build in 25% buffer time around each big rock. Things always take longer than we think. If you schedule an hour for your big rock, protect an hour and 15 minutes for it. This final step separates the truly effective from the merely hopeful. Ask yourself, what could interrupt my big rocks today, and how will I respond? Prepare what I call principle-centered responses to likely interruptions. If someone asks for an urgent meeting during your big rock time, what will you say? How will you handle unexpected phone calls? What if there's a genuine emergency? Here's your final question. Define what success looks like for today. If I only accomplished my big rocks, would today be a victory? This question keeps you focused on what truly matters. Now let me address the most common obstacles I hear. Stephen, I don't have 10 minutes. This is what I call a production/production capability problem. You're so focused on production that you're not maintaining your production capability. The 10 minutes you invest will return hours of effective time. If 10 minutes of planning saves you 2 hours of crisis management, what's the return on that investment? 1,200%. I can't predict my day. You're absolutely right. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control what happens in you and through you. Your big rocks provide stability in uncertainty. They're your true north when storms arise. This feels too structured. Here's what I've learned. Structure provides freedom, just like the banks of a river give direction to the water's flow. This isn't about becoming rigid. It's about building character-based habits that support your deepest values. Remember, this daily practice flows from weekly planning. You're not planning your day in isolation. You're executing your week. Your daily big rocks should advance your weekly goals, which advance your monthly objectives, which serve your annual mission. It takes approximately 21 days to begin forming a new habit. Your skill will improve each day. Week 1, establish the routine. Week 2, refine the process. Week 3, experience the compound effect. Here's your final consideration. Connect this practice to your deepest motivations. Why does being effective matter to you? How does your personal effectiveness serve the people you love most? When you connect daily discipline to your deepest values, you'll find the desire to sustain this practice. This isn't just time management, it's life leadership. And it begins with 10 minutes tomorrow morning. Now here's what makes this practice truly powerful. Small, consistent actions aligned with correct principles create profound results. What I call the upward spiral of growth. Consider the mathematics of improvement. 10 minutes daily equals 70 minutes weekly, which equals 60 hours annually. The full work week invested in your most important priorities. But the real power isn't in the time itself. It's in the compound effect of daily discipline. This practice creates synergy with everything else you're trying to accomplish. It begins with the end in mind. Your daily choices serve your larger mission. These 10 minutes become renewal time, sharpening your saw in the mental and spiritual dimensions. And here's what I've discovered. Daily discipline in small things builds the character for leadership in large things. The impact extends to all 4 dimensions of your life. Physically, proactive living reduces stress and increases energy. Mentally, clear priorities create mental clarity and focus. Spiritually, alignment with principles connects you to your deeper purpose. And socially and emotionally, effectiveness in your priorities improves all your relationships. You see, these principles work because they're based on natural laws, not personal opinion or cultural trends. Just as the law of gravity works, whether you believe in it or not, these principles of effectiveness operate independently of your feelings about them. As you change from the inside out through this daily practice, your external results naturally improve. Not through force or manipulation, but through alignment with the fundamental laws that govern human effectiveness. This is how 10 minutes transforms a life. Here's what I invite you to do. For the next 21 days, that's what research shows it takes to begin forming a new habit. Commit to 10 minutes each morning for your daily Big Rocks session. By the end of week 1, you'll notice less reactive scrambling. You'll find yourself saying, I planned for this, instead of, I can't believe this happened again. By week 2, you'll experience the peace that comes from proactive living. That constant feeling of being behind will begin to fade. By week 3, people around you will notice the difference in your effectiveness and presence. They'll see someone who has moved from being managed by circumstances to managing. Remember, the principles we've discussed are universal and timeless. They worked for our ancestors, they work today, and they'll work for future generations. You have the power to choose your response to any situation. Choose to put first things first. As you align your daily choices with correct principles, you'll discover what I've learned over decades of teaching and living these principles. Put first things first, and second things fall into place naturally. The question isn't whether these principles work. The question is, will you work the principles? Your transformation begins tomorrow morning with 10 minutes.